Thanks very much for joining us today. Really looking forward to this session talking about how Shopify B2B can help elevate your B2B online offering. My name's Mark. I'm the founder of GPMD. We're a specialist e-commerce agency. Been going 25 years. We do wholesale and retail e-commerce websites on Shopify. Evan, could you give us a little introduction?
Absolutely, Mark. My name's Evan. Obviously, I've been working at Shopify now for just under 3 years. I've now shifted my focus to be working on the B2B side of the platform, which is a really exciting time to be working on it. So as we grow out this platform, that's the team I'll be working on.
Thanks very much, Evan. My name is Jared Cohan. I run Studio 49. We're Ireland's largest Shopify agency. We specialize in e-commerce for retail B2C and B2B on the Shopify Plus platform. Today, we're going to be talking about Shopify B2B. It's one of the hottest topics in the B2B e-commerce space at the moment. It's now a leader in the B2B e-commerce space, much discussed, obviously, because Shopify B2C and D2C has had an enormous impact on e-commerce over the last 10 years. Today, we're going to talk about the core features of the Shopify B2B platform. We're going to talk about how you can expand upon Shopify B2B foundations. We're going to cover a little bit around the roadmap, what has been released recently, and hopefully what might be released in the future. And then we will end the session with a Q&A. So to talk about the core features of Shopify B2B, the first thing to note, I suppose, is that Shopify B2B is available on the Plus plan only. We're going to talk a little bit about the core structure, and then we're going to get into the key features. With respect to the core structure, the company is at the center of Shopify B2B. In the first instance, a B2B merchant can create companies and can assign sales reps to each company. That sales rep is able to place and process orders for the companies they're assigned to via the back end of Shopify. Companies can then have one or more locations assigned to them. The locations can obviously be in different regions, but they can also be in different markets and different jurisdictions. Each location can have one or more catalog of products assigned to it, which in turn can have different currencies, different product availability, and prices. Locations can also have multiple company contacts or customers assigned to them. This allows you to create a hierarchy of company contacts. For example, a store manager who can buy only for a specific store location, but then a regional manager who can buy and see orders for multiple locations. The company admin can see the orders for all locations and can access the invoices, etc. for those. Where a contact is assigned to multiple locations, when they log into the system, they're asked to specify the location they'll buy for and progress from there. I'm going to hand over now to Mark, and we'll go into the companies and locations in a little bit more detail, Mark.
Okay, so I'll show a little screenshot here. As Joe said, the company is really the core part of Shopify B2B, and it builds on customers. So you can assign your customers to, you create the company, you can assign the customers to the company or the location, as Joe said. And this is where you control a lot of your settings. So you can have your list of customers here, your sales staff listed there. You can then link a market, a catalog, and multiple catalogs. We're going to come on to that later on. And you set up payment terms and checkout and notes here. So this is your admin panel for a company. Here I've got a fictional snowboarding shop. They've got a few locations across the UK. So I've listed their shops here, like 2 in London, Leeds, Hemel Hempstead, Exeter. Now the location is really powerful. It's one of the features that we really needed in B2B and didn't have for quite a long time back, a few years ago. You use it for shops, for offices, warehouses. It could be building sites. It could be galleries. So any kind of sub-location, like Jer said in his introduction, that is very powerful. It allows an admin of a company to see orders from across the company, but it also allows that company to have each location segmented that way. So that's your core piece. And then once you've set up your companies and locations, you then move on to your catalogs. So the first thing we can do with a catalog is you can control pricing. So you can create a catalog that just converts into a different currency if you wanted to. You can automate that currency. So there's an automatic conversion, or you can do a price list. So it's a fixed conversion. We use that a lot. The overall price adjustment, this allows you to create a catalog that has a discount or an increase if you wanted to. You can go both ways. This is something that actually I've never used. We always do fixed pricing. So we always do, when we create a price list, the customer has a specific price for each product. And that's usually powered by an integration with an ERP or an account system. You could have 5 different levels of discount, A, B, C, that offer 5, 10, 15% if you wanted to structure it that way. The other thing that you can do with catalogs, which is really powerful, is create a subset of your product catalog. So if you've got a company that has a particular set of products they want to offer to their customers. So one of mine sells shoes to McDonald's and Pret, one of my customers, and they want to sell a specific set of shoes to McDonald's and a specific available set to Pret. So this allows us to do that really easily. We can create the catalog for each one, and then we just assign it to the company, and those are the shoes and those are the products that company will be able to buy. You also see here you've got a simple but powerful rules that you can add. So you can do your minimum quantities, the increments you want to buy in. So if you're doing pack sizes, this is how you should do that. If you've got a pack size of 6, 12, you can do increments of 6, and that means they only buy them in 6. So it's a very nice way of doing that. And also you can do your pricing breaks. So the example there of just the more you buy, the less you pay per item. So I think it's also important to note that you can create a catalog for a market. So you can do it for markets. And again, you can either do the different pricing. So if you want to do a different currency in a market, this is how you do it. But also if you have slightly different products across your markets, this is the way you would do it as well. So I wanted to touch on checkout and payment terms. First of all, you have payment terms. You can assign payment terms to a company or a location. So you have different payment terms for each location in the company if you want. What that means is if it's net 30, I can place the orders and then I don't have to pay until 30 days. And in my account, it will tell me what's overdue and it will allow me to settle those invoices when I want to. The other thing you can do is you can require a deposit. If you want to say 30-day terms where I want 10% deposit, you can do that here. The other thing that we use quite a lot as well is the ship to address. So allowing your customers to ship to their own addresses, which is here. If you tick this, they can ship to any one-time address. Or if you want to make sure that they can only ship to a shop or an office or a company location, then you leave this unticked, and that's all that's available to them. And then the order submission is just a very simple sort of order approval internally. So if you want all your orders to go straight through to the warehouse automatically, just leave it as I've got shown here. You can also set that for draft orders. So you can review the order, you can update the notes, and then once you're happy with it, you can approve it and push it through. The My Account section, first thing is you can have multiple payment methods. So if you've got multiple company cards, you can add them all in here. People can access them. They can do the payments there. The other thing you'll see here is this is showing you the other staff that are at the location that I'm in. You've got 2 permission settings. So you can either be a location admin, so I can see everything to do with that location, or you've got a setting that's ordering only. I can only see my own orders. I can place my own orders. I can't see anyone else's. You can see everyone else in that location, regardless of the permission. And the little blocks that I've got here are the ways that you can extend it a little bit. So you can add in blocks into My Account, a bit like checkout extensions, if you're familiar with that. There are specific areas that you can add blocks into and put your own custom content in. And the other thing that you can do is you can add links into My Account. So you can have a whole section in My Account, like a dashboard. If you wanted to build your own invoicing section, then you can do that with a private app in the My Account. And one thing to note is you can't change these blocks that are here. So the blocks that are part of My Account, you can't change them currently. This is new customer accounts only. So B2B only supports new customer accounts, not the legacy ones. Final point on the core features is themes. There are 2 ways that you can set up Shopify B2B. You can have a blended store, which means that you are running B2C and B2B on the same store. And when your customers are logged in and assigned to a company, it gives them the B2B experience. And when they're not, it doesn't. So you can customize your theme. You'll just see here that you can customize B2B here alongside your other markets. You can use meta objects, which Joe will talk about. And if someone signs in a particular company, you want to show that company logo, for example, or you wanted to do some customization, use a meta object, tie it into the company and display the things that you want.
So what Mark has covered are the core features of Shopify B2B. These are things that come out of the box and are specifically created to be B2B focused concepts in Shopify. Things like companies, locations, catalogs that can be assigned to companies and users who are assigned to companies as contacts and that sort of thing. When you have the core foundations in place, you are, of course, entirely empowered to expand on those foundations. And what we're going to cover in this section is some of the ways of expanding, from leveraging the app ecosystem, then to work with meta fields and meta objects. Mark suggested there, for example, creating a meta object for a company that allows you to also store things like logos and maybe some other information associated with that company that you can use on the front end, private apps and integrations, and then admin actions and admin blocks, part of the admin UI extensions inside in Shopify. So to touch on the ecosystem, in the words of the Apple App Store, whatever you can come up with in terms of things you'd like to do in e-commerce, there's probably an app for that in the App Store on Shopify. You can search the App Store and there are a number of B2B specific apps. I'm just calling out a couple of highlights here, but there are hundreds of these apps that will allow you to do things like streamlined onboarding in B2B. So this is the Onboard B2B company profiles app. Allows B2B customers to self-manage and add other users for the same company into the B2B store. There's apps for extending B2B buying, which speeds up bulk buying for wholesale customers, allowing those customers to do things like do a CSV upload of SKUs to create an order really, really quickly. Apps that do things like handle the request a quote type functionality that you might want. Allows you to, if you wanted to, hide prices for certain products and require that the customer requests puts through an RFP. And those requests for quotes then can be handled through draft orders in the back end of Shopify. Another one that caught my eye is a catalog maker. Allows you to create a digital PDF catalog that you could print that will facilitate the sales reps in the field when they're going to the customers. They can leave the catalog behind, and the catalog will be created off of your Shopify catalog. Can include barcodes or QR codes that can be scanned to take the customer or the end customer to the product to facilitate the ordering of the items that they're looking at in the catalog. I've never seen one company do one thing the same way twice. And that's definitely the case in B2B. So when you're looking then to decide, well, actually, our company information is specific, how we handle our customers is specific. Shopify also has you in that regard. One of the really powerful features that they have in place is meta fields and meta objects.
I wanted to ask Evan, are there any apps that you see regularly that are relevant for B2B that are popular?
I think the first one that you have noted there, the onboard B2B, the company profiles, is one of the key apps that we are seeing being used by multiple different merchants, and just extending out that account dashboard. As we go on, we are seeing more and more apps become more and more relevant in projects. This would be one of the key ones that we're seeing quite a lot.
There are definitely two that I particularly like. I love the Locksmith app. It allows you to add sort of password protections or block off parts of your site. Also, I love the Be Sure checkout rules. It just allows you to hide things in the checkout, show things based on a set of rules. There's a Shopify list. It lists all the B2B apps.
So we were talking about metafields. So these are custom pieces of structured data that you can attach to most entity types in Shopify. Those would be products, customers, orders, companies, etc. They're typically structured as name value pairs. In my example here, we have the credit account customer number for the customer in the ERP that is attached to this B2B store. So that allows us then to manage some aspects of the credit account features, including the available balance. So we can, when the customer logs in, we can do a check to see what the available balance is. What's very useful here is that admins and sales reps are very used to talking about their customers based on numbers, and they will search for them based on numbers in the back end of Shopify and so on. So it's useful to store that information. The credit available balance here is a situation where it can show and hide, let's say, a manual payment method or pay by invoice. If the cart is higher than so the value of the cart is higher than the available credit balance, then we could hide the pay by invoice using the Be Sure checkout rules that Mark has just mentioned. We can also, of course, show the balance. If the customer has enough credit available to them, they can request a pay by invoice. There's documents and invoices that we've attached to the customers. We often get asked to attach statement of accounts or invoices from the ERP so that the customer has access to that, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about that later on. And in this case, we also have an indication as to whether the customer is active or not in SAP. So this sometimes it allows where if there's an onboarding through the website itself, and the customer has to be onboarded into the website and then onboarded into the ERP and then approved, this will allow us to know whether the customer has been approved, for example. Up until the point where the customer is approved, the customer can only use credit cards to make payments. But once they're approved and once they've got a balance, etc., they're able to use a pay by PO or a pay by invoice. So those are ways that you can use metafields to help you handle some of the custom data that you might have from your ERP in Shopify. Beyond metafields, there's also a concept in Shopify called meta objects. And meta objects are an extension of metafields. In some ways, they allow you to create a reusable content type, which is basically a collection of metafields. This example is not a B2B example here, but it's an example where we built a jersey personalization tool. It's for the jerseys for the Premier League and for the rugby leagues and so on. And it shows the information, like the fonts that can be assigned to a jersey. So when the customer on the front end is actually typing in their name, they put like Jared Cohan or Jer or whatever on the jersey, it shows up in the correct font. So this was a way where we were able to store this information, which is admin accessible in Shopify. And it is kind of like a one source of truth that your Shopify administrators are able to use to handle information. In Mark's earlier example, he was using meta objects to store logos and other information about companies, for example, that may not have another place to be stored in.
You can do sort of team profiles. You can do, case studies. You can use it to do whatever you want. And it's really that and meta fields gives you such a high degree of customization.
So that's meta fields and meta objects. But then we're looking at other ways of more deeply customizing or integrating Shopify with other systems. And in that case, we're talking about integration platforms or automation platforms and private apps. In our case, we use an integration platform called Orchestra, which allows us to integrate with ERP, EPOS systems, warehouse management systems, dropship partners, etc. To integrate with Shopify to provide data transformation, business process automation, and microservices to Shopify. I think, Mark, you use N8N for a similar purpose.
We use N8N a lot. There are like apps to do integrations with NetSuite or Dynamics or Xero. There are quite often scenarios where you want to push data that's not covered by part of the app. So for example, in Jer's scenario earlier with the meta fields, he had an available credit balance that may not have been available as part of the app. So you could use either Orchestra or N8N just to pull that information. Another thing that N8N allows us to do is plug in AI, a large language model, so it could then answer questions or query it and provide responses.
With integrations, as you mentioned earlier, Mark, there are native connectors for Shopify for platforms such as Microsoft Dynamics, Business Central, and NetSuite, and so on. But there are also often times where you need to do something slightly different. For example, you might have price lists that take into account like customer group pricing with item discount groups for products. It might be a kind of a more custom way that you do your pricing inside Business Central that you need to get access to. Your Business Central system integrator can expose those price lists and your integration tools can access those separately. One of the other areas then in terms of Shopify and how Shopify supports that is through private apps or custom apps. These are apps that can be created specifically for your store. They're private to your store rather than published to the public Shopify App Store, often used for very custom features that you might have. In this particular case, that I have a flow for here, we have a SAP integration. SAP exports invoices. Those invoices don't really belong inside in Shopify. These are all of the invoices for customers. But the customers who are self-serving in the Shopify B2B platform might legitimately want to see those invoices. In this particular case, SAP exports the invoices. They're stored in a secure server via the middleware, Orchestra in this case. And then Orchestra has also provided a microservice that will respond to a private app request to show the invoices based on the customer number. So we take the customer credit account number that we've stored in the meta field in Shopify. That request, Shopify makes that request through the private app to collect the invoices, and those invoices can then be stored and shared with the customer, which can be very, very useful and reduce your customer service time. This brings me into the area of admin UI extensions. The first thing with admin UI extensions is a concept of admin actions. And this is where Shopify allows you to add additional actions into the back end of Shopify on the Shopify entities as products and customers and orders and so on, which you can then use to trigger a particular custom feature, often supported through a private app, for example. In this particular case, the administrator is able to go to a product page and choose this create a shop code feature, which will create a QR code for a particular product. When the customer scans the QR code, it takes them directly to the website. If you like, you can also, in this particular case here, apply a discount code for people who scan that QR code. So those QR codes could be added into magazines or newspapers or on bus shelters or whatever, and take customers directly to those pages with the discounts already available. The next piece is the admin blocks, which allows you to access information from the private app. So again, with this shop code example, this allows us to see the shop codes that have been created and how frequently they've been scanned. So we go to the product page and we can see this information. Where this is also useful in the B2B context, for example, with the invoice example that I had earlier on, is an administrator can go to the customer entity in the back end of Shopify. We created an admin action that allows the administrator to see all of the previous invoices from SAP for that customer. We can show those invoices in the app block. But importantly, what our client, one of the issues that they had was that the customer service agents were continuously being phoned and asked to send my last 3 invoices or the invoices since September and so on. They had to go into a separate server, find the invoices, then they had to find the customer's email address in the ERP, take that, and then they had to go into Microsoft Outlook and paste everything in, download and attach it, etc., etc. It took like 15 minutes to do it per request. In this instance, we were able to create an admin action, showed the invoices. The administrator just checked the invoices that they were interested in and hit send, and it sent automatically to the customer's email address. Didn't have to look up anything, didn't have to do anything, and it made the action, turned it into like less than a minute's worth of work. Even though Shopify has a lot of other built-in features, it supports the addition of these features that expand on top of your Shopify business. So I think that covers a lot of the expansion elements.
We're going to start off with a little bit about the Forrester Wave report. We've been recognized as a leader, Shopify B2B.
So just for context, Forrester Wave are a leading research firm that completes analysis of the e-commerce landscape in general. I think the most interesting thing from Shopify's point of view is the actual speed that we moved into that leader status. And I think it was really down to 2 things. On one side, we have Editions. I know we've spoken about Editions a few times today. Editions is essentially Shopify's version of feature releases, which happens every 6 months. So it's our feedback loop is essentially 6 months whereby we continuously learn, we continuously add more features, which is ongoing all the time. And on the other side of it, you have things like the API capabilities and how easy it is to integrate into, ERP systems and PIM systems. It really is one of the leading, enterprise software companies on the market on that side also. And then you also have the app ecosystem, which I know we've spoken about a good few times today, and we've mentioned a few apps. That just continues to extend out the core features that are added every 6 months even further. Which is such a benefit to Shopify in general, I think that's the reason why we've been able to just catapult into this leader status under the Forrester Wave. I think the most important thing that merchants want to feel is that they have a platform that can scale with them as they grow and as they get bigger. They have a partner that's also scaling. So it's something that I hear all the time, which I think this will back up.
We thought we'd talk a little bit about the R&D. I mean, the amount invested stands out, doesn't it?
The one number on this that also stands out to me is the sheer amount of engineers that are actually working in Shopify. It's approximately 25% of the entire company that are engineers continuously working on the platform. And now also the 1.7 billion is a huge number as well. But it just goes to show the importance from Shopify's point of view, from an engineer standpoint, just to continue to build out the platform, continue to get better, don't slow down.
One of the things that stands out for me is what I would call the product ownership. Things like catalogs and markets. You can see that develop. Like I always thought markets was a very good implementation of the multi-market. Doing the languages separately is very flexible.
To add to your point there, Mark, the feedback loop is so short from a time perspective. It's every 6 months. So, as we learn, as we figure out what needs to be fixed, it's added within the next editions or the editions after that. So you're not waiting around too long for any sort of feature to be added.
Let's talk about that a little bit. So this is the winter edition. It was called the boring edition. This was January this year. It was called the boring edition because it wasn't about releasing new features. It was about improving what was already there. The things that stand out here, like the draft orders and being able to do more with that, tax exemptions, the Shopify Collective is another thing that's quite interesting. It's a network essentially where if you are a brand and you have products, you can make your products available. Other retailers can pick them up and display them on their store and you drop ship them out. And then we had the summer. Horizons was a bit more high impact, right? It was, all about AI and, the real headline of Horizons was being able to create your own content blocks and build your own components within the theme customizer. We had a lot of very strong pieces here. Not as many features, but they were bigger in their impact. I think particularly markets and B2B. I think the way that restructure was really good. Connectors for NetSuite, VAT validation, minimum, maximum. There's quite a lot to that. I know it's a short line, but really important. And some more stuff for Shopify Collective. And there are more apps, so I'll send you that link. That list of B2B enabled apps is pretty long now. Can you give us a little flavor of what's the focus for Shopify B2B?
I suppose just speaking to some trends that we're seeing in the B2B market in general is that buyers in general are becoming younger and younger. We're seeing the end B2B buyer become younger, meaning that that person is expecting a digital first experience. They're expecting the same experience they would get on the D2C side, on the B2B side. And so Shopify are really leaning into that and building features around that and making sure things like, self-serve ordering and the actual reordering frequency is continuing to get better. So them two things are something that we're really seeing. We're actually seeing digital experience be part of the decision-making criteria when you're picking what wholesaler or what manufacturer you're working with. So much so that some customers are actually leaving their manufacturer to go to a different manufacturer just because their digital experience is better. So we're really leaning into that. Just some figures to share as well on that, on them two things around the self-serve ordering and the reorder frequency. We're seeing up to around a 33% increase in self-serve ordering when migrating to Shopify within the first 6 months. And then when it comes to reorder frequency, we're seeing approximately 20% increase also in that, up to that. So you're just seeing, again, going back to what we're seeing in the market, making it easier for your buyers to buy from you is a key thing that we're continuing to build out.
You can see alongside that, that digital experience and improving that comes also business efficiency, taking away a lot of the manual keying in of orders, automating integrations. That kind of goes hand in hand with that self-service thing. So not only are you improving your experience for your customers, but you're also improving your business operations and making them more efficient and saving money that way. So I think we're just going to see a real acceleration of this, and that it will start to get to a tipping point where if you're not using a modern tech stack and allowing your customers to do these things, then you're going to be at a disadvantage.
It's actually becoming a competitive advantage, having a good, self-serve experience. And really the word that keeps coming up in conversations that I'm personally having is reducing friction as much as possible in all areas of the business, not just for the end customer, but also the back office team, the customer service team. How do we reduce friction so we can focus on the actual business?
I think we're now at the last bit, Q&A. I don't know whether we have any questions.
Yeah, we have a question here from Jeremy Grieve, and he's asking if there's a way to automate an inbound purchase order to import and set up a draft order in Shopify for the admin to review and finalize to minimize admin time. I presume the inbound purchase order will be coming from the end customer's ERP. That isn't there in Shopify at the moment. It would be the job of a private app. With AI now, like in the old days, that would have been somewhat difficult because usually purchase orders are delivered as PDFs or CSV files or spreadsheets and with lots of other information alongside what you're actually ordering. But with the power of AI nowadays, it's an awful lot easier to parse multiple different types of PDF or CSV file to pull out the actual information that you're asking for. It would be the job of a private app, I would say in this case, or an integration via N8N, for example, where you would have a way of pulling in the purchase order, probably an email address. And when the order comes in there, use AI to actually parse the order itself to figure out which SKUs and what quantities and what the PO number might be and which customer it's talking about. And then plugging that into the draft order section in Shopify. There is definitely a flow there that would be a fairly straightforward one to implement. It is a request, I guess, Evan, but I'd say it'd be a fairly difficult one to offer as a standard feature, given the number of different types of PO orders that you might get or purchase orders.
I might jump in and ask a quick question. One phrase that I hear coming up a lot in my conversations is digital transformation. Just from your perspective, Jer and Mark, how does digital transformation tie into B2B?
From my side anyway, a lot of the companies that we're speaking to about B2B are quite embedded in their legacy approach, using sales reps in the field, taking orders over the phone, and still taking orders over fax in some cases. Taking orders via email is quite typical as well, but it's very, very manual based. In some ways, some of the sense of it is that it's a person-to-person type of a job. You're trying to sell something. And at the start of the process, customers often feel that the B2B e-commerce won't have an enormous impact. The orders may not be very, very high. There's definitely a way to approach this. And what I've seen is that when the B2B client goes to their customers and gives them like a white glove onboarding onto the self-serve B2B platform and shows them how to use it, there's an investment there, but there's a little bit of investment in terms of here's how you use it, here's how you order, here's how you can upload a CSV file to do your bulk ordering, for example. And a little bit of training and get the sales reps to do that, for example. And then you can show how to reorder. And it's the reorder is the real powerful part of it. And when the customers get used to reordering at their own convenience, whenever they want, at nighttime or, when they can't get the sales rep on the phone, etc. That self-serve aspect is really, really powerful. And what I found is that many B2B merchants were quite surprised at how much people eventually used the self-serve power in B2B. So from a digital transformation perspective, I think there's definitely that element of we don't believe it can really work, to a transformation of, okay, wow, it's actually tearing along, and then you run into operational issues. That's a different day's work. That's what I see. I don't know, Mark, how do you find it?
I think it's a massive opportunity. It's a great way of going to meet your customer, helping them understand the platform, and you're just improving your chances of success. We see a lot of manual processes, a lot of opportunity to improve and automate and drive efficiency. And the other thing that we see quite a lot of is that some of the other B2B platform, the legacy B2B e-commerce systems are very restrictive. You can't do promotions or even like categorization very easily, or menu systems. So like those things that we take as a given can be actually a huge win for a customer, so they can take much more greater control over their website.
That exact area that you're touching on there, some of the B2C approaches to doing things. I mean, B2B and B2C are definitely different. There's no doubt about it. And I'm not saying that you can just transpose what you do for B2C and win in B2B. But there are certainly parts of what we do in B2C on a day-to-day basis that will dramatically improve your B2B sales. Things like customer segmentation, integration with tools like Klaviyo for email marketing and things like that. And definitely nudges for rebuying and reordering and those sorts of areas. What I find is that the B2B customers, or clients, I suppose, are quite surprised at the breadth of options that they have that they can now use to market to and sell to and persuade and upsell and cross-sell that they wouldn't have had previously. Where B2C and D2C, it's almost old hat to do all of this kind of work. This is greenfield in some cases for B2B. So it definitely is an additional benefit when you move to a platform such as Shopify for B2B.
All right. Thank you both very much for joining us. Really enjoyed that chat. It was really insightful. And thanks everyone for joining us today. Enjoy the rest of your day.